of the fantastic work that Liverpool Muslim Outreach Society does. And some of those slides are truly inspirational. And obviously it's a tall act for me to follow Fatima and Zaina. But I'll do my best, knowing that after me, Sister Lauren's going to be inspiring you about why we should all get involved. But I get to do the project. I get to tell you the nuts and bolts of what it's all about. And that's what the purpose of today is, to introduce the project so that we all have, hopefully by the end of today, a clear idea of what it is that we are seeking to achieve. And the first thing to say about it is that this is not a Liverpool project. It's not something that LMOS has come up with, or some Muslim or indeed a Christian organisation. This is a government scheme. That's the first thing to remember about it. And the government has official schemes to deal with refugees. So there's a vulnerable persons resettlement scheme and a vulnerable children's resettlement scheme. And the community sponsorship scheme, which is what we're talking about today, is really an opportunity for individual community groups to get together and help a resettled family. Now, this is obviously a great opportunity for the family, because these are official refugees who come through the system, and if they're allocated to our schemes, obviously they benefit. That's the whole idea. But perhaps the area that we don't focus on so much is whether or not we benefit from this. And I would say, of course, we do. Because we get to practice our faith, as you heard Bahir and Ehsan mention. We get to live that faith, and it becomes much more than a box-ticking exercise. Sadly, for some people, that's what religion is. You tick the boxes. So you've said your 5 prayers today, ticked that box. You've fasted for the month of Ramadan, so you've ticked that box. But no matter how many boxes you tick, if you haven't impacted on the world positively, I would suggest you haven't fulfilled your duties as a Muslim. And I firmly believe that each of us has different responsibilities. So if you have been granted little, then I would suggest that maybe in return God is going to expect little from you. But we in this room have all been blessed with the peace and security of being able to live here. Many of us have well-paid jobs. We're comfortable. And so we need to do something for others. So this is an opportunity for us as a community, as well as for those who are going to benefit from this service. And the one thing that I hadn't really thought about, to be honest, until today, was another way in which we benefit. We've made new friends. And if it wasn't for this scheme, perhaps we wouldn't have done that. And yet we've got guests here today from different church groups who've engaged with us. We're going to be able to learn from them how they've gone about their projects. They are generous in giving their time and knowledge and experience of the project so far to us. And so it's an opportunity for communities to work together. And it's all very well, and I've seen this in my interfaith work over the years, that it's all very well talking about what our religions have in common. And we want to live peacefully, and we want to help the poor, and we think that you should do good, and we believe that we're going to be accountable one day. We've got all those things in common, and that's good to have that dialogue. But what's much more fruitful is when you actually work together. when you share the time and effort of doing projects together. That's when communities truly come together. The vulnerable individuals, the vulnerable families are precisely that. They are vulnerable and they have needs. And some of those needs can be very complicated. If they've come from a war-torn area, they can have all sorts of needs. It's not just like helping somebody next door who needs a cup of sugar. This is potentially quite a traumatic experience for them. We don't know individually what they've been through, but they're coming to a strange country, different language, and it's a huge effort on their part to settle in these new surroundings. And they are, being official refugees, they are effectively given a 5 years leave to remain in this country. And thereafter they're entitled to apply for indefinite leave. And they, again, being official refugees, are entitled to work and they're entitled to benefits. Now this scheme being an official scheme, not anyone can do it. Individuals just can't say, well, I'm going to set up my own community sponsorship scheme, because there are various hurdles that have to be crossed. For a start, the group that's coming up with the scheme or applying to be a community sponsor has to produce a detailed and credible plan. So that's the first stage. They have to make an application when they submit that plan. They have to show that they have the resources to carry this project through, which means financial resources, it means housing resources, it means the personnel. So 2 people would struggle unless they really had a lot of free time and talent on their hands, but a couple of people would struggle to succeed with such a sponsorship scheme. So we need personnel resources. We would need the consent of the local authority. So this can't be done without involving our local authority. Of course, they're the ones who are going to be providing a lot of the services that the resettled family are going to require. So they need to be kept up to speed with what's going on and have their input in it. Now, in Liverpool, the lead for such schemes, a lady called Julie Kashira Hamwi, I had the opportunity of meeting with her a couple of weeks ago, just to let her know that, look, we're thinking of this scheme. And she was great. She was very supportive, very enthusiastic, willing to offer any help that she could, and also very happy for 2 reasons. One, that the Muslim community was thinking of getting involved, because she obviously knew that most of the refugees that they're dealing with are from Muslim backgrounds, so it's good if Muslims are showing an interest in this. And 2, because we were coming to her at a very early stage. And she was saying that's a great thing to do, because some groups are setting up and then coming to us saying, oh, we've got this application, and we have to say, well, actually, you haven't quite got that bit right, and this needs to be looked at again. So the fact that you're willing to engage us right at the outset is a very positive sign. Once the application is made and approved, there's an agreement that is signed between the community sponsorship group and effectively the government. And so this is a contract, and so there are responsibilities that come with it. And the overall responsibility to the resettled family is for 1 year, except in the case of housing, where the responsibility extends to 2 years. Now, as I say, there are people in this room who've gone down this path and who are available to question and converse with later on while we're having some food. So please take full advantage and ask them about what they know of this scheme, because there's only so much I can tell you from the government website itself. Now, what you don't have if you go down this path is the opportunity to choose the family. You don't get to pick the family. And so people can't say, well, I'd like a family from Pakistan or Syria or wherever. What you can do is, if you've got a good reason, you could, once a family is allocated to you, you can say, well, no, this family isn't suitable for us for a variety of reasons. So say, for example, it's a family where family members need wheelchair access, and the property that you've got is over several floors, then clearly that property will be unsuitable for that family. So you've got good reason to decline there. And the thing perhaps to emphasise in bringing this project to your attention is that this isn't some easy option. This isn't like all the other ways of giving charity. This isn't something that you can opt in and opt out when you feel like it. It's a contract that we will have signed, and therefore it's going to have terms that we will have to fulfill. And it's a significant responsibility. And for any significant responsibility, there has to be an exercise in discipline. And that's something that, if I can just digress for a moment from the project and just talk for a couple of minutes about discipline. We as Muslims theoretically have the discipline of timekeeping, because we have 5 daily prayers which have to be said at a particular time. So, as far as I'm concerned, Muslims, having had that 5 times a day practice all their lives, should be the most punctual people on the planet. As you'll have gathered this evening, that's not always the case. But it's an opportunity, and sometimes you think, why is God doing things in a particular way? Maybe it's to teach us some particular lessons. And so the importance of punctuality is a discipline. But even then, you can break it down. If you go to the mosque at the prayer time, you will see lines that are practically measured out. I mean, to be fair, the carpet's got lines drawn on it, or different shades that mark the lines where people stand. But even if it wasn't marked out, Muslims are great at standing in a straight line for prayer. If we suddenly moved these tables now and it was prayer time and we were going to pray here, we would form the best lines you've ever seen in your life. Now that's a discipline. But I can also guarantee all my Muslim brothers and sisters that we will never be asked to form a line in the street just to show our line making skills. It's not going to happen. It's a discipline that we've learned. It's not going to happen. So maybe the discipline is to permeate other areas of our life. Maybe God is teaching us that, look, if you're disciplined, you can achieve in other areas. And I think that this is an opportunity now for the Muslim community to step up and to show some discipline and to get involved in this sort of project. Don't get me wrong. As far as I'm concerned, you can't get any more generous than the Muslim community. When it comes to giving time and money, we're fantastic at it. Some of the figures that Tahir mentioned earlier on, hundreds of millions of pounds raised. So the Muslim community is fantastic at doing this, extremely generous. But this is something that requires a slightly different skill set, and something that needs to be done because it also shows wider society that, look, we don't just give charity in the privacy of our own homes. We don't just give charity abroad. We are responsible and getting engaged in resettling those refugees that so many of you have issues with. We are actually getting involved. Because what we don't want to be in a position of is people saying, well, look, these refugees are coming over from Muslim countries, but it's not the Muslims who are actually helping them out. We should be part of that cohort that seeks to help them out. And so this discipline, in terms of this project, starts at the very beginning, before the family has even been allocated. We have to get a group together and, for a start, raise the money. Find the appropriate housing. steps have to be put in place before the family arrive. And I'll mention those again in a moment. But when that family arrives, we have to be there at the airport to meet them. Now that doesn't mean that the whole Muslim community goes down to Manchester Airport to greet this family, although that's usually how we operate. What it means is that there should be people allocated with individual responsibility. So you, 2 or 3 people, your job is to turn up on that day to welcome and greet the family. Your job is to... I look much better now, don't I? Your job is to take them to their accommodation. Your job is to get them settled into their accommodation and explain, for example, where the nearby shops are or where the facilities are. So it's right from the very moment that they land. Their orientation has to be taken care of. The housing, which I've mentioned, has to be taken care of, and it has to be suitable housing. Because they're official refugees, they're entitled to housing benefit, for example, they're entitled to work, but you shouldn't find accommodation in the nicest part of town because you think that you're doing them a big favour, because ultimately they're going to have to pay for this, or their benefits are going to have to pay for this. And if there's a shortfall, then you'll be making it up. And that's not the way to operate, because amongst other things, this scheme has to be seen not as charity, not as us handing something over to these families. These families are entitled to live a dignified life, which means they've got to be in charge of their finances. They've got to be in charge of their accommodation. They don't want us to be subbing their rent every week or every month. And so it has to be suitable accommodation. We have to help them register their children in schools, register with local doctors and with the social services. So at every step of the way, we have to be involved. Help them find English language training, English tuition, job centre appointments. We have to be there with them, help them through that process, and help them towards gaining employment and self-sufficiency. That's the key to dignity. No one can truly live a dignified life if he or she is reliant on others. Of course, sometimes you have to be. And of course, that's where the community should be helping out. But the greatest dignity is when people are self-sufficient. And so this involves a lot of work. And so really a team is required. And so you can have within the team a couple of people who are in charge of accommodation. So if one person isn't available, there's a substitute. And some of these responsibilities aren't going to last forever. So once you've sourced that accommodation, that might be before the family, well, it will be before the family arrive. But then it might be the case that the 2 or 3 people allocated responsibility for accommodation, well then their job's done. They can take a back seat. And maybe the people who are involved in registering for schools and medical services, they have to then come into place. So different people will be giving up their time at different stages, but the team has to be clear at the outset on who's going to be doing what. And there's going to be a financial commitment. The Home Office say that you need a minimum of £9,000. That is a minimum. It's realistically going to probably cost more to set up such a scheme, to set up the accommodation, because of course the accommodation's got to be in place before they arrive, and there's going to be a period of time before their housing benefit kicks in, and so you're responsible for the rent in that time. And so fundraising is important. Now you've heard some of the figures bandied around. Fundraising should not be a problem at all for the Muslim community. Shouldn't be a problem at all. £9,000 should be raised in a night. I should make the point now, I'm not asking you to raise £9,000 tonight. I'm just giving an idea of the figures that the scheme requires. But it's important to mention this now, a week before Ramadan starts, because that's a month in which you'll find Muslims are even more generous, even more charitable, even more inclined to serve God by giving up their money. And you'll have various campaigns in various mosques and online and on various, TV channels that are endeavouring to raise money for charitable projects. Well, this is an opportunity for one such project. Yes, we should be raising money for the poor and needy abroad. Yes, we should be raising money for homeless people here, but we should also be raising money for this scheme to be a success. Because this scheme has the potential to transform a family's life. Transformational impact. That's how important it is. And of course, if you get that team together and you raise the money and you have a successful scheme for this one family, firstly, you'll be setting an example for others. And we've learned, from the example of our friends and guests today, we've been motivated and encouraged by them. So just as we have, others might follow suit. And already we've had some interest from Manchester, a group in Manchester, who want to see how we do things so that they can do it. So you'll have different schemes cropping up, but also you can help more families. And if you've successfully helped one family and thought, yeah, we can do this, we've got the team for this, you can apply and help another family. Only you'll have a proven track record by then. There's training available. There's lots of guidance on the government's websites about how to go about this. And as I say, there's expertise in this room. This is an opportunity for our community to engage with other communities and an opportunity for our community to transform a family's life. But for me, the greatest opportunity it presents is in the evolution, in the maturing of the Muslim community in this country. We go through phases. You find with the Jewish community almost exactly the same trajectory. You start off in the city centre and people are involved in the rag trade, and you have a place of worship in the city centre. So the earliest synagogues in Liverpool are a walk away from here. Just as the first mosque, Al-Rahma, putting aside Abdullah Quilliam for a moment, but the first mosque for the majority of the community was here in Toxteth. And then the community gets embedded and succeeds and prospers, and they move out to the suburbs, just like the Jewish community did. But as you prosper, as you succeed and you put down roots, you get involved in different aspects of civic society. And that's what the Muslim community needs to be mindful of now. That now it's not the time to sit back and say, well, we're doing the right thing, we're praying, we're being good, we're law-abiding. Now is the time to be engaged. And so it was, as I say, I had that meeting at the City Council. They were thrilled to bits that Muslims were getting involved. And they need to see that the Muslim community isn't a passive community, an active community. And the first steps on that process have already been taken by Liverpool Muslim Outreach Society, and you've seen the fantastic work that they do. Well, this is simply building on that. So hopefully that gives you a good introduction of what the project's all about, and you'll be able to speak more freely with us later about it. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Sister Lauren Bloom to hopefully inspire us all with her words of wisdom.